40 years is a long time in the car business. You only have to look back on the last decade and the rapid advances we've made in technology in terms of safety, fuel economy, performance and connectivity, not to mention the fact we're staring at the horizon looking at the dawn of the autonomous car, to comprehend just how far we've come. Things certainly change.
Well, 40 years ago, this was the car of the future, the first Holden Commodore.
The VB Commodore was smaller, more efficient and packed with more technology than the beloved Kingswood it replaced, as it was based on the German-built Opel Rekord, but tweaked and tailored for Australian tastes by Holden's expert team of engineers.
And fast forward to today, and this is the 2018 all-new Commodore. Coincidentally, a car that is smaller, more efficient and packed with more technology than ever before. And guess what? It also is based on an Opel and tuned and tweaked for Australian conditions by Holden's crack engineering division.
The biggest difference is the VB Commodore was made in Australia, and the new ZB Commodore, well, it isn't. Following the closure of Holden's manufacturing plant in South Australia last year, this is the first fully imported Commodore and brings with it a raft of wholesale changes and challenges for Holden. For starters, there is no longer a V8 engine option, and it's not a traditional rear-wheel drive muscle car. It's also not a traditional sedan. Instead, it's either a liftback or a wagon. And it arrives at a time when SUVs, rather than normal passenger vehicles, are becoming the default choice for family cars.
The burning question is, does it live up to the Commodore legend? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's give it a go. Okay, so first things first, this isn't a Commodore as we've known it before. But let's take the rose-coloured glasses off for a second, because Australians were genuinely spoilt with the last generation VE and VF Commodores. It was a truly great V8 powered muscle car. But remove that group of enthusiasts and the rest of the world has moved on. And this car aims to recapture what the Commodore was always about. A family car, built with style, space and new technologies. And in that context, it pretty much nails the brief.
Despite its smaller exterior dimensions, the space inside the cabin is not that much different to the VF Commodore it replaces. Those in the front have an identical amount of headroom and room in the footwell, although they do sit closer together thanks to the narrower centre console. In the back there is heaps of legroom, a little more than the VF in fact, but the sloping roofline does restrict headroom somewhat. And the liftback body style means there is extra cargo space, and it finally has the flexibility of a split folding rear seat for longer items. The Commodore is available with a lot more key safety features too, with automated emergency braking and lane departure warning standard on all models, while top grade versions have adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assistance. It also comes loaded with the latest in connectivity. There's a 7-inch and 8-inch touchscreen in higher grade versions that comes with Apple CarPlay, embedded sat-nav. There's also a digital instrument cluster in the Calais V and VXR models. There's even heated, ventilated and massage seats, something the Commodore has never offered before. Now the dash ultimately isn't as classy as some of its European rivals, and its mostly black layout is going to make it a pretty hot car in summer. But it does feel solid and really well built. Under the bonnet there are 3 choices of engine depending on the model grade. There's a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder, there's a 3.6 litre V6 which is unique for this segment, and then there's a 2-litre turbo diesel. We're driving the VXR at the moment, which is intended to replace that sort of SV6 sporty Commodore and above, and it's actually a really good driver's car. Sure, it doesn't have the character of that big burly rear drive V8 muscle car, and it won't do smoky burnouts or donuts anymore, because this thing has now an all-wheel drive system, and a really smart one. It actually uses all of the electronic systems to be preemptive rather than reactive. So point to point, I reckon this car is just as quick as a Commodore V8 in a really twisty, challenging scenario, because this has got plenty of grip, huge amounts of grip, great traction from that all-wheel drive system, really good steering, and the work that Holden has done again on tuning this car across all models with the suspension in terms of compliance, body control and grip is outstanding. These guys do a world-class job, and that is the key to the Commodore. It's tuned for Australian taste by Australians who know what we want and how we want it. The V6 is an interesting engine. It doesn't have a lot of low down power, but
They've made this thing a lot more characterful than it's ever been. It used to be a raspy, gnarly kind of thing up the top of the rev range, but now it's got a beautiful sonorous soundtrack. When you really get into it, it's actually quite enjoyable to drive.
Holden expects the majority of customers will choose the 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine, which becomes the most powerful base engine the Commodore has ever seen. Producing 191 kilowatts and 350 newton meters, it is a gem of a motor that is smooth, quiet and effortless in any environment, but has a strong surge of mid-range torque for quick getaways and overtaking at highway speeds. It is only available in a front-wheel drive configuration though, and that does mean there is some tugging through the steering wheel under heavy acceleration. The other real surprise package, and potentially the biggest opportunity for Holden, considering the swing shift to SUVs, is the high-riding tourer wagon. Now, we only had the chance to test drive it out on gravel roads at Holden's Lang Lang Proving Ground, so we'll reserve full judgment until we test it properly, but it is a smart-looking car. And considering a fair chunk of rural drivers still have to navigate dirt roads, the 4-wheel drive system is really clever in delivering power to the right wheels at the right time, keeping it safe and secure in slippery conditions. And for enthusiasts, it's actually a really fun car to drive off the beaten track.
The thing about Commodore is everyone's got a perception of it. It's either a big gas guzzler or, for that reason, it's a great muscle car. Now this is completely different. It's an all-new Commodore, it's an all-new way of thinking, but it still has the DNA that Holden has injected into cars for more than 70 years. Don't dismiss it because of its European roots. The Patriotists, of course, loved a big Aussie-built sedan, but this is where the future is. This is classy, it's comfortable, it's quiet, it's got more technology than we've ever been able to access. Forget what you knew of the Commodore in the past. This is a different Commodore, no doubt about it, and it's going to be a different buyer group, and for those, it's pretty damn good. So, what's the verdict? Well, let's get the obvious out of the way first. This isn't a Commodore as we've known it in the past, and it won't win over those V8 loving muscle car fans. But for everybody else, there is a lot to like about it. It's more spacious, it's more efficient, it's safer, and it's still a great car to drive. Ultimately, this is exactly what the Commodore would have morphed into naturally, even if it was still built in Australia.